Welcome back to the Play by Play Podcast YouTube channel. I want to thank you guys so much for returning back to the podcast, back to the show for another video. Really quick before we get into it, I want to encourage you guys to go down below really quick, subscribe to the channel really fast, as well as liking the video, commenting on this video, as well as sharing with your friends. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those ads are going to be down below. We're on all of those social medias. You get to see my latest reactions to breaking news in the NBA, the NFL, and combat sports, and you will never miss whenever the podcast decides to upload an episode. And now with all that out of the way, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it with the breaking news that we received late last night around midnight, which was kind of weird, even for a sports that can hit you at any time, because John Harbaugh quickly is once again employed. He is finalizing a deal with the New York Giants to become their next head coach. And according to sources and to Adam Schefter mostly, which I want to bring up really, really fast, his top choices, there was only two, actually. He was choosing between both of the New York Giants and the Tennessee Titans, which is kind of odd to me, just looking at it plain at first, because you think to yourself that there are a lot more secure options in terms of, the program's history, in terms of some of the talent margins that you have. Like, for example, the Atlanta Falcons. That was where I personally predicted that Harbaugh was going to end up, because I felt that, they had realistically had consistent seasons on their hand of about 8-9 to about 10-7. You have an up-and-coming but weaker division, and then you have, great talent on the offensive end with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and whatnot. So I thought that would be a desirable destination, but it ended up being the Giants and the Titans, and he ends up taking the Giants job as mentioned. And can I just say that I love this move? It was sort of unexpected to me, but I absolutely love it. And I love how John was going about this carousel for himself, or these interviews for himself, and the two that he came down to and the one that he ended up picking. And here's why. There are now no expectations for John Harbaugh or the New York Giants. You can spin it however you want and say that, Harbaugh was with the Ravens for 17, 18 years, was consistently winning, was a one-time Super Bowl champion all the way back in 2012, is a first ballot Hall of Fame head coach. And so him coming to the New York Giants puts a little bit of pressure on him, but it really doesn't. And I haven't really heard any real pressure from the media on this. Like, there's nobody that has really came out and said, if John Harbaugh doesn't begin winning games with the Giants within his first or second year, they should tank it. They should just throw this all away. And I think that that's really, really important, especially when it comes down to hiring a coach, and especially hiring somebody like John Harbaugh, because one thing that we do have to remember is Harbaugh is not a play caller. He is not going to be calling any plays for the New York Giants at this rate. He is what, in football terms, some people are calling a CEO type of coach. He is a game manager. Yes, he's special team. He'll probably have a little bit of control over the special teams in New York, but overall, his decision-making comes down to game management. It comes down to rotations. It comes down to just overall management of the team. He's not going to be calling the plays. And when you have a team like the New York Giants that has been very, very inconsistent when it comes to their coaching, when it comes to being very, very inconsistent with quarterback play, when it comes to being very, very inconsistent with playoff appearances, playoff wins, and just overall team success and morale, having no expectations is the best thing that you can have, because now John can take this team, he can grab this team, and he can say, I know where we're at right now. I know what we have with the New York Giants. And you look around at this team, and this will go into it, but I have a potential franchise quarterback in Jackson Dart who might be a little bit quirky, might not necessarily thrive or really fit within a total professional scheme coming from Lane Kiffin's scheme over in Ole Miss. I have a running back in Cam Scatterbo who needs a whole defense to really bring him down, is a hard runner. I have Malik Neighbors coming back off of injury, who, when healthy, is one of the most electric number one wide receivers in football. I have a franchise offensive tackle in Andrew Thomas. I have solid talent on the defensive end. Kayvon Thibodeau, they drafted Abdul Carter last year, and there's a couple of other pass rushers that are not coming to mind as of right now. I think that they signed away, was it Brian Burns or Devin Bush? Either one of those. I think it was Brian Burns. I apologize for my mix-up. But I have these pieces, and now I am setting the foundation. I can lead this locker room. I can connect with my players. I can do what I did in Baltimore. And now I can build this team the way that I want to. I have talent, and I now have a top 5 overall pick in this year's draft. And now I can build this team the way that I want to. Because, and I'm going to take this from the opposite point of view real quick before we return to the Giants. Think about the situation that Harbaugh was in Baltimore. It was constant high winning expectations every single year. There was an expectation to win, to make the playoffs, to win the division, to win the Super Bowl every single year. And with the consistent success that you have on a team like that, not only can that become exhausting, not only can you feel limited in terms of team building, but you are limited in terms of team building because number one, you're a desired designation for, yes, higher talented, but older free agents that you're going to have to spend a lot more money on, limiting your cap space. But you also have a lot later draft picks and thus young talent to really work with and develop. And so each and every single year, Harbaugh's looking at his squad and he's saying, well, a couple of years back, we needed a running game. Let's go ahead and sign Derrick Henry, who still hasn't really shown many signs of realistically slowing down in his career, but is on the older end when it comes to running backs. Let's go out, let's draft Marquise Brown at, 31, 32 overall a couple of years back. That draft pick didn't end up realistically working out. Nate Wiggins, with a top 25 to 32 pick. I can go on and on and on, but you're limited in terms of how you can build a team. And you're limited because you need great players immediately to consistently continue to win. So going back to the Giants, with the young talent that you have, and mostly with that top 5 draft pick that you have this year, he can go anywhere. He can draft Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson at the wide receiver position to get Jackson Dart some more weapons. He can go out and get his opposite franchise tackle, which has been a much more desired position for NFL teams over the past couple of drafts. You look at what the Chargers did drafting Joe Alt. You look at what the Jets have done drafting Fashanu and Armand Bembou, the Titans with J.C. Latham and whatnot. You can go out and get your opposing franchise offensive tackle in Spencer Fanu out of Utah and play him opposite of Andrew Thomas. You could go and get a top defensive talent, whether it's another edge rusher at the linebacker position like an Arvell Reese or a Bailey or Ruben Bain out of Miami or whatnot. You could upgrade your cornerback position, which the secondary to me is one of the weaker parts of that defensive roster, and go out and get the cornerback from LSU. I'm forgetting his name at this moment. I think it's Marcus DeLune or something of that matter. You can go anywhere with your draft pick. Hell, I'm just throwing stuff out there. You could even call up the Las Vegas Raiders and say, Las Vegas, I know the position that you're in. I know the player that you need. I know that you need a change at quarterback. Let me gift to you Jackson Dart and some draft assets from either this year or next year. You get your potential franchise guy, or if he doesn't end up working out, you could go somewhere next year with it. Let me move up to number 1 and let me draft Fernando Mendoza and let me get the quarterback that I want to play with and mold. That could be an option for John Harbaugh. It could be an option for him to go out and trade for a veteran quarterback who's on the trade block, like a Kyler Murray from the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not saying that that's what he's going to do, but it's an option. Or you could scrap all my plans. Like I said, go out and draft, a talented linebacker or receiver. You don't have any expectations of winning on your hands. You go out, you have a first season of 4-13, 5-12, 6-11. You grab another top 5, top 10 pick, and then you have a plethora of quarterbacks in next year's draft to go ahead and pick from if Dart is not your guy. You can get Arch Manning. You can get Dylan Raiola. You could get Dante Moore. You could get Drew Aller once he comes back from injury away from Penn State. You can still go out and get your guy. And moreover, you can continue to mold this team the way that you want to. Yes, Harbaugh at times maybe seems a little bit out of touch. The game management wasn't as great towards the end of his stretch in Baltimore. I felt that there was something a little bit awkward about the relationship between him and Lamar Jackson, although Lamar was probably just dealing with a lot mentally because of the consistent injuries that he was having. But sometimes that's what happens when you're just in a place for so long. You begin to forget about changing up certain things in accordance to new players, and you begin to just fall into your everyday habits that you've been doing for the last 18 years, and you become stubborn to be willing to change things. And a new team, a new conference for that matter over in the NFC is exactly what he could possibly need to switch things up, to reset his mind. You look at Sean Payton in New Orleans coming over from Denver, and this is something that I apologize, but I'm going to continue to talk about because I think it's a perfect example. Sean Payton down the stretch had a very, very difficult time in New Orleans down the stretch of seasons being able to close out big-time playoff games. Was on the downturn a little bit, lost his quarterback in Drew Brees, then takes a year off to go out and be an NFL analyst, comes into Denver and changes that culture immediately. And now look at where Denver's at right now, at 14-3, number 1 overall seed, having the potential being 2 games away from an NFL Super Bowl. I mean, look at what a change of scenery can do. Andy Reid, you look at Andy Reid towards the end of his stretch in Philadelphia. Was it great? Not really. They struggled down the stretch, but then Andy came across the pond to the AFC, to the Kansas City Chiefs, saw the team that he had with the Chiefs, stuck with Alex Smith for 2 or 3 years, had modest success. He came in 2013. I believe they drafted Mahomes in 17, I believe. So had a 3-year stretch of having Alex Smith, had difficulty making it out of, the first or second round of the playoffs, had difficulty beating the top teams in the division. At the time, it was my Denver Broncos. And Reid went and he said, look, I love Alex. He's a great talent, but he limits us with the ability of what we can do on the offensive end, especially with so many of the speedy and smart players that we have on the offensive end, with guys like Tyreek Hill who are emerging, with Travis Kelce coming onto the scene as one of the top tight ends in the league. I'm going to go out and get my man Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech, who can chuck the ball downfield 50, 60, 70 plus yards, who can roll out and make shovel passes off of his back foot. I'm going to go out and get this guy and make my offense much more creative and dynamic. And guess what? They started winning games, started winning Super Bowls. You look at his brother, Jim Harbaugh, down the stretch in San Francisco, finally had to leave to go to Michigan, comes back to the Chargers, and sure, have the Chargers improved on a playoff scale? No, not at this moment. And I still do believe that they need a couple more pieces to do that. I don't believe that the Patriots' loss this past week was really the fault of Justin Herbert, as it was for his offensive line and his lack of receiving options. But there's been a culture set in LA. And when you look at the fact that Harbaugh John Harbaugh talking about, doesn't just bring winning, but brings consistency to the table, the consistency of staying at a spot for more than a decade, that is something that a dysfunctional franchise organization like the New York Giants need. Now, the major question mark, or the major hole that they're going to have to fill when it comes to this is the play calling. You have a CEO coach in Harbaugh. He's going to manage the game, manage your timeouts and whatnot, manage the rotation. You need to go out and get effective play callers. That is going to be the make or break of this team moving forward. Is, can you get the right coordinators in place to be able to play call for your game? That is going to be the big piece for Harbaugh to really manage right away and put an effective staff together. So the question is who can you go to on the offensive side, on the defensive side, that you can trust? And luckily for Harbaugh, I think that there are a couple of options that you could go out and go around and look for. I look at offensive coordinator Davis Webb from the Denver Broncos, who is the pass game play caller right now, also quarterback coach for Sean Payton, has a fantastic relationship with Bo Nix. You go ahead and watch any Broncos game. Anytime that Bo Nix comes to the sideline after a drive, he meets with Sean Payton, and right next to Payton or right behind him is Davis Webb. Spends majority of his time on the sideline with Davis Webb, has a phenomenal relationship, and is put into some solid situations by Davis Webb. Davis Webb was a quarterback for the Giants for a couple of years, so having that type of organization tie would be important. And I think his ability to connect and be with Jackson Dart, especially being somebody who is younger and who's experienced at the quarterback position, and who, by the way, I don't realistically see being a picked out head coaching candidate just because of his youth and because he hasn't been a full-time coordinator. You could call Davis up and say, Davis, come to the Giants, a place where you're really comfortable with. Take this coordinating position and show people that you can be an effective full-time offensive coordinator before going out and getting a head coaching job. That could definitely be on the table for them. You look at the defensive coordinating side. Could you get Ejiro Evero from the Carolina Panthers, potentially? Somebody who was sought after when he was also on the Denver Broncos, went over to Carolina, has made some strides over in Carolina, giving him a much bigger job with a lot more talented pass rushers over in New York. Is that potential? Heck, is it too much out of the question, and this might be getting a little bit crazy, to call up Cliff Kingsbury or Mike McDaniel, especially if they don't end up getting a head coaching role, which, especially in Mike McDaniel's case, is probably very unlikely to happen. But if the tide doesn't turn the right way and Mike McDaniel or Cliff Kingsbury don't end up grabbing a job, is it too much for John to call them up and say, hey, would you like to look for the offensive coordinator position? What about Burke from the Houston Texans defensive coordinator? We talked about him in the Mike Tomlin episode. Call him up and say, hey, we have an opportunity here where you can actually control the defense. You can call plays. You don't have to bend the knee to DeMeco Ryans and go at his discretion. We'll let you have full freedom of what you can do defensively. That's a potential opening for them. So the bottom line is that there are candidates out there for New York to go after. The question is can they get it right, and is it going to be the realistic right fit? Because when you're looking at your OC, you're going to have to get somebody who could potentially be familiar with Harbaugh, but mostly is going to have to be familiar and have a good connection with Dart, and is going to be able to put him in solid situations to succeed, especially a guy that hasn't really been, once again, in a full-time professional scheme, been in more of a RPO read type of offense like he was with Lane Kiffin and then later on with Brian Daboll this year. You're going to have to potentially either kneel and aid to his needs and potentially even his weaknesses, or you're going to have to turn the whole offense upside down and just hope that he develops it. Is Todd Monken on the table for offensive coordinator? I know that you don't want to entirely grab all of the Ravens coaching staff from Baltimore, because look at how this past year went, but Monken, somebody who is a sought-after head coaching candidate as well, could be plugged in there, is familiar with Harbaugh. We saw Sean Payton, once again, when he came to Denver, how many of his familiar New Orleans Saints coaching staff that he brought over. Darren Rizzi for special teams. He hired Joe Lombardi for offensive coordinator. So that's a possibility as well. But at the end of the day, going back to Harbaugh, the biggest needs for him really, and this is easier said than done, hire staff that you can trust and build the team the way that you want it to be built. Those are the two big time main things that he needs to focus on, which, going back to number one in the coaching staff, being somebody who has been in this league for so long, highly regarded, highly trusted, it's going to be probably pretty easy for him to call up a lot of these coordinators or quarterbacks or running backs or O-line or wide receiver coaches and talk them into potentially getting a job because of how trusted and highly regarded he is within the league. The big time part about it is managing the roster and going out and getting guys that you trust and that you would like to build your team around. But the great thing about it is there's options. If you're Harbaugh, you have pieces in place. You now bring the foundation to the table and bringing consistency and pride and respect to this organization. You set the foundation with your pieces on top. Now you have to continue to build your pieces on top of that. And it's not for Giants fans. I just want to say this real quick. It's probably not going to be pretty to start off. I would not expect a Sean Payton type of season where you go, 9-8 within your first season, miss out on the playoffs by a game or two, and then the next season you're the number 7 seed, and then the following season you're the number 1 seed. No, I think the situation that Harbaugh is in, it's going to take a couple of years. I don't expect next season to just be a huge time success and for them to be immediately competing for a playoff spot. Maybe they could, but I don't think that that's really realistic to expect from them. But in 3 years, in 4 years, this could be a team that a lot of people hate to play, and that could realistically be contending in what has been a one team or one-sided beatdown within the NFC East with the Philadelphia Eagles, which again, you also have to look at that and that opportunity with the Commanders having a down year, Cowboys still trying to figure out an identity like they have been for the last 20 years, the Eagles a little bit more on the downturn, firing their offensive coordinator, trying to figure out what was going wrong on offense, defensively trying to hold on to certain pieces that they may not even have the money to realistically keep all of them. There's opportunity for Harbaugh right now on the Giants. And the most important thing for him is there is little to no expectation there to get this right immediately. And what that does is allows everything to breathe, allows everything to relax, and allows him to do what he does as a head coach, which is to manage the roster and to keep his relationship positive with the organization and most of all with the players. So overall for me, if I had to rank this hiring, probably put it at about B+ or A-. The reason why I wouldn't give it a total A or A+ is because I think I would have personally liked to see a little bit of a younger head coach, especially to mesh with some of the younger rookie and second-year players that you have. But I also think that you get a lot of knowledge and experience when it comes to Harbaugh, and that is almost as important, if not as important. So about an A- for me, I would say. Really, really great hire to start off what has been a chaotic coaching carousel. There are still 8 other vacancies out there, and I can tell you this one happened quick. I figured that it would because Harbaugh would be probably the most sought-after candidate on this list with his experience. I expect these other 8, especially now with the Titans being out of the running for Harbaugh, to take their absolute time and interview everybody that they possibly can. But if Harbaugh picking between the Titans and the Giants was a surprise, I think that we are in for even much more bigger surprises during the rest of this carousel. But let me know what you think about all of that down below in the comment section. What do you think about the Harbaugh hiring? How do you think that this is going to go? And who do you think is next on the hiring list, as well as for what team? Leave all of those answers down below within the comment section, as well as liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and just taking a quick second to subscribe to the channel, as well as following us on all social medias. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those apps are going to be down below. We're on all of those social medias. You will get to see my latest reactions to breaking news in the NBA, the NFL, and combat sports, and you will never miss for whenever the podcast decides to upload an episode. And without further ado, guys, that's all that I have for you guys today. I will see you guys on the next one. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week, and peace.